Hey everyone, Jason here from Off the Beaten Path. It's Easter and we're out testing the 76 Zoleo with no winch and no recovery gear, and this is where Lucas sent us. Yes, he did. This is Long Spur Track down near Lake William Hovel. As you can see, look, the entry to the river crossing there is a bit interesting. Filled up with some wood. The King River's not up particularly high at this time, so the crossing itself was never going to be difficult. Did notice straight away the 76 certainly moves a lot more. You watch the bonnet as we go across here. I mean, look, admittedly, I don't have a direct comparison. I haven't driven the Pajero across this crossing, but it doesn't do that normally. So, yeah, it's certainly probably a bit stiffer suspension, very light in the back with basically nothing in the car. Exit here is a little bit interesting, but plenty of traction. I love that it's seasonally closed after the river crossing, so you know, if you weren't sure and you came across here, you might find it closed. Anyway, you could turn around, I guess. Now, it wasn't too long before this track got pretty interesting. We did have a little bit of rain in this area the night before, so it was a little bit wet, but not too wet. If it had been much wetter, it would have been very interesting. So check this out. This is loose, rocky, a little bit rutted. Again, watch the 76 move a little bit, but man, does this thing just eat it up. I do like the sound that V8 makes. She's moving around a fair bit, but was never not going to do it. So look, still running stock suspension. Later on, when I get some aftermarket suspension in there, I'll be interested to see how it responds differently. And again, another rocky sort of climb here. Plenty of traction on these particular sections though. Now this video is clearly not the whole track. This is just some highlights. We took Long Spur, then the Basin track through to Rose River Road from Lake William Hovel. Probably need to work on my gear change a little bit there. Could be revving a little harder than it needs to. Not sure. This section's a little bit of a clay base. Wasn't too slippery. Keep in mind, I'm running road bias all-terrains on this thing at the moment that came with it. So they're not the Falcons that I normally run. And yeah, this section was kind of clay, rutted, slippery. But again, this thing just kind of ate this up as well. And yes, it's got its first pinstripes from me already. And after those climbs, it wasn't too long before we saw a decent sized puddle, and that was really just the preamble of what was to come. Wasn't terribly concerned by this. It didn't look like it was going to be very deep. Fortunately, it wasn't. But after coming through that section, it really wasn't very long at all before we came around this corner and were presented with this little obstacle here. 3 separate bog holes, long one in the middle, shorter ones on the left and right. And as I said, keep in mind guys, I'm by myself. I got no winch. Like, you know, if I had a winch, you just dive in, and if you need to be winched out, well, you winch out. I've got no winch, I've got no recovery gear, nothing. And I'm running road biased all terrains. So we nosed up and had a look at this one. I just didn't like the look of it. It wasn't real long, but I just didn't like the look of it. It looked like it was probably deep. No, I didn't get out and check. Everybody knows you can assess the depth of the bog hole simply by looking at the surface of it. That's right, isn't it? Maybe not. Debated about that middle one. That was a big yeah, nah. So it's like, okay, we're going to commit on the right hand one. It doesn't look that long. I reckon we can get in and we can get out before we get stuck. Second gear, low range. There it goes. Again, never hesitated for a second. And after that, we've got this clay climb here, which again wasn't too wet today, but I could certainly imagine a situation where if it was raining or had been raining heavier, this would be a far more interesting proposition. It's a pretty steady climb, pretty well rutted in sections, as you can see. But again, we made pretty short work of that. And a little bit further along Basin Track on the way out, a bit of a tree fall, been there a while I think. By the way that the track around it is pretty well established. And some puddles there. It wasn't too long before we hit this. Now, let me just say, this was a lot softer, slipperier than it looked. So I probably gave that a little bit more right boot than it really needed, but this thing just leapt over that. It was a bit of a wild ride, let me tell you. Anyway, there's some highlights from the first probably serious test of the 76 off-road. Loving it.